December 2, 1942. Chicago, Illinois. A bitter wind cuts across the barren campus of the University of Chicago, and beneath the bleary winter sky, men in heavy coats and thick scarves shuffle past scaffolding and steel beams. Inside a cavernous laboratory hidden beneath the stands of Stagg Field, scientists gather around a strange and dangerous creation, a nuclear pile, the world's first controlled chain reaction. The air hums with tension, a mixture of scientific curiosity and the weight of unspoken responsibility. Here, the Manhattan Project is no longer just a series of experiments, it is a race against time, a secret weapon that could end a war, and a gamble that humanity may never forgive. Across the Atlantic and deep inside the shadows of occupied Europe, other eyes watch. German physicists, some coerced, some committed, attempt their own experiments, racing toward a weapon that could tilt the balance of the global conflict. Meanwhile, intelligence officers and clandestine operatives take notes on every scrap of information, moving in the shadows to uncover secrets buried beneath layers of code, secrecy, and bureaucracy. It is a world in which one letter, one photograph, one laboratory observation could alter the course of history. In the United States, the Manhattan Project moves at a staggering pace. Thousands of engineers, physicists, and technicians pore over calculations, centrifuges, and uranium isotopes. Yet even in this controlled chaos, uncertainty gnaws at the edges. Could the scientists truly complete this weapon before the war ends? Could espionage accelerate their work? Or, conversely, could it leak secrets to enemies, creating unimaginable risk? The question lingers like smoke over the windswept lab. What if critical intelligence arrived at precisely the right moment? Espionage, in this context, is not a mere abstraction. It is a force that shapes timelines, redistributes knowledge, and transforms theory into reality. From the Soviet Union to Axis Europe, spies have infiltrated laboratories, copied notes, memorized formulas, and smuggled schematics. In some cases, they deliver insights to eager allies. In others, their actions threaten catastrophic failure. The Manhattan Project, for all its compartmentalization and security, is not immune to these invisible currents. Each courier, each coded message represents a potential shortcut, or a perilous detour. Consider the stakes. An atomic bomb is not merely a technological achievement, it is a strategic lever capable of ending battles, nations, even entire theaters of war. Every delay in production carries enormous human cost. If espionage could shave months, or even years, off the timeline, the implications are staggering. The war might end sooner, millions of lives could be spared, and global politics could pivot on the distribution of knowledge. Yet there is also the counterpoint. Premature exposure of the secrets could unleash a chain of consequences beyond imagination. Within the labyrinthine halls of secret laboratories, spies are shadowy figures who never appear in official records but whose presence is palpable. They memorize atomic weights, note the nuances of isotope separation, and relay coded messages to handlers thousands of miles away. These operatives operate with precision, their success measured not in heroics but in silence. The fewer people notice, the more effective the intelligence. And in a war defined by speed and secrecy, intelligence can be the difference between victory and disaster. The Manhattan Project is often portrayed as a monolithic effort of American ingenuity, but beneath the surface lies a web of intersecting threats, potential accelerants, and clandestine actors. The scientists may be racing against the clock, but spies race against them, against political oversight, and against the ticking cadence of a world in flames. This interplay between discovery and theft, between controlled experimentation and surreptitious acquisition, defines the what-if scenario at the heart of this story. What if espionage had provided the United States with atomic secrets earlier, cutting the timeline dramatically and altering the trajectory of World War II? Paris, 1943. Rain-slicked cobblestones reflect the dim glow of gas lamps, and in a nondescript apartment above a quiet street, a figure pores over a carefully typed document. This is no ordinary clerk. This is an agent of the shadows, memorizing the details of isotope separation techniques and plutonium refinement. In the walls of laboratories across Europe and America, spies move in subtle patterns, photographing schematics, stealing notes from desks, and listening in on conversations between exhausted scientists. Every observation is painstakingly coded, every detail verified and repeated to ensure accuracy because in espionage, mistakes can be fatal. The mechanics of atomic espionage are a blend of cunning, precision, and patience. Couriers memorize formulas in their heads, or use ingenious concealment methods. Hollowed-out tools, microfilm hidden in buttons, and coded correspondence disguised as innocuous letters. Intelligence networks rely on trust, often built over months, where a single slip of character could compromise years of work. The Soviet NKVD, for example, cultivated agents like Klaus Fuchs and Theodore Hall, young physicists who found themselves quietly moved by ideology, curiosity, or the thrill of intellectual danger. These men worked inside the Manhattan Project or in connected facilities, bridging the gap between clandestine research and the corridors of foreign intelligence. Imagine Hall in a quiet dormitory room at Harvard, copying schematics with meticulous care, each line of his notes potentially reducing the timeline for Soviet nuclear development by months. Or Fuchs at Los Alamos, attending lectures on neutron moderation, quietly committing formulas to memory. Their actions, unseen and unheralded, are the lifeblood of espionage, knowledge harvested without drawing attention, a subtle extraction that can ripple across continents. The impact of such operations is both practical and psychological. When intelligence reaches the right hands, it provides not just technical insight but a roadmap for experimentation. The difference between stumbling blindly through months of trial and error versus knowing the correct approach can be staggering. In the case of atomic weapons, where one miscalculation could render months of work useless, or trigger catastrophic failure, the value of accurate intelligence is immense. Yet the story is never one-sided. Counterintelligence units within the United States and Britain maintain a careful watch, aware that the potential for leaks is constant. Security measures at Manhattan Project sites are draconian. Identification passes, guarded perimeters, compartmentalized information. But no system is perfect. Espionage thrives in the gaps, in the spaces between oversight and routine, where the most determined agents can observe, record, and transmit secrets undetected. Every corridor, every shared lab bench, every informal discussion becomes a potential vector for intelligence. And the consequences of success, or failure, are enormous. If spies deliver critical insights early, the timeline for the bomb's development could compress dramatically. Calculations that might take months can be verified almost instantly. Isotope separation, reactor design, and critical mass estimations could all accelerate. Conversely, discovery by the wrong side could spark a nuclear arms race in the middle of the war, potentially prolonging conflict and magnifying devastation. Espionage in this context is not glamorous. It is methodical, painstaking, and high stakes. Agents become extensions of scientific inquiry, translating observation into actionable intelligence. The Manhattan Project, despite its monumental resources and talent, could be subtly accelerated or imperiled by these human shadows. In the hidden network of spies, one carefully stolen note or one memorized formula has the power to tilt the balance of global conflict, transforming months of painstaking research into days, or placing a destructive weapon in the hands of the enemy before its creators are ready. Los Alamos, New Mexico, 1944. The desert stretches endlessly under a searing sun, and inside the guarded compound, brilliant minds focus on calculations that could ignite the world. Amid the clatter of slide rules and typewriters, a few figures are invisible threads in a larger web of espionage. Klaus Fuchs, a physicist of quiet demeanor, moves among colleagues, absorbing lectures, attending meetings, and noting the minutiae of plutonium implosion designs. To his neighbors, he is simply a gifted scientist, diligent and unassuming. To foreign intelligence, however, he is a conduit to the future, capable of delivering secrets that could shave months from the timeline of nuclear development. Across the Atlantic, Theodore Hall, a prodigy barely out of his teens, struggles with the moral weight of his actions even as he transmits memorized information to handlers. Hall's notes on critical mass, reactor configurations, and bomb design diagrams arrive encoded and often fragmented, Yet the intelligence is enough for experienced agents to reconstruct key elements of the atomic puzzle. His youth and quiet profile make him less suspicious, a living testament to how personal circumstance and opportunity intersect in espionage. But spies do not act in isolation. They are part of intricate networks of couriers, cryptographers, and handlers, all functioning with the precision of a clockwork mechanism. Microfilm documents pass through multiple hands, coded letters traverse continents under innocuous covers, and messages are carefully timed to avoid scrutiny. Every interaction carries the risk of exposure, yet the potential reward, accelerated access to the ultimate weapon, is deemed worth the danger. The margin for error is vanishingly small, and the intelligence gained is meticulously cross-checked for accuracy. Meanwhile, the Manhattan Project itself operates under intense compartmentalization. Few know the full picture. Most are confined to their specific fields of expertise. This isolation, designed to protect the project from external threats, ironically creates openings for espionage. Observant agents who can piece together fragments from multiple disciplines, chemistry, physics, metallurgy, gain insights disproportionate to their apparent access. The result is a kind of silent amplification. A single observant individual memorizing the right equations can accelerate understanding across an entire research effort. The stakes of this intelligence transfer are breathtaking. Each piece of data stolen and transmitted has the potential to compress timelines, reduce experimentation cycles, and guide decision-making with precision that might otherwise take months to achieve. In a war where timing is everything, the difference between success and delay is measured in thousands of lives. And the shadowy players, Fuchs, Hall, and their handlers, operate not in battlefields but in libraries, laboratories, and quiet hotel rooms, proving that wars are won as much in the mind as on the front lines. Yet espionage is not only a story of science, it is a story of human complexity. Agents wrestle with ethical dilemmas, loyalty, and ideology, and their decisions reverberate far beyond the immediate laboratory. A well-timed transmission can save months of work. A misstep can expose an operation and change the trajectory of history. In this way, the narrative of atomic espionage intersects with the larger drama of the Manhattan Project. A race against time, a secret weapon, and the shadows that quietly accelerated its creation. New York City, 1944. The hum of telegraphs and the clatter of typewriters fills a clandestine office tucked away on a quiet street. Here, handlers and couriers manage the invisible lifelines of atomic espionage. Reports from Los Alamos and other Manhattan Project facilities are encoded into seemingly innocuous messages, often disguised as routine correspondence or academic letters. Each message carries fragments of critical knowledge: isotopic concentrations, reactor schematics, and theoretical calculations. Delivered with precision, these transmissions allow foreign powers to reconstruct aspects of the bomb's design without ever seeing the laboratories firsthand. The impact of such intelligence is tangible. For scientists receiving decoded data or notes, previously speculative calculations now gain clarity. Processes that might have required months of experimental verification can be cross-checked against the acquired intelligence. Uranium enrichment timelines accelerate. Plutonium implosion designs can be refined more efficiently. Even small pieces of information, such as the optimal thickness of tamper materials or the spacing of explosive lenses, provide invaluable shortcuts. These seemingly minor details, when combined, can significantly compress the developmental timeline of the weapon. Espionage also shapes strategic decisions. Military planners, armed with intelligence that anticipates the capabilities and limitations of the bomb, can allocate resources more effectively. Laboratory teams prioritize critical experiments over peripheral investigations, guided by the insights gleaned from stolen knowledge. The coordination between intelligence and scientific work becomes a force multiplier, demonstrating that the value of espionage extends beyond mere theft. It is the acceleration of human ingenuity under wartime pressure. Yet the flow of intelligence is fraught with tension. Handlers constantly vet couriers, inspect codes for signs of compromise, and ensure that information is neither misinterpreted nor traced back to its source. The risk of exposure looms large. If an agent is caught, the entire network could collapse, and the stolen secrets might endanger the very countries they aim to assist. Maintaining secrecy while optimizing the utility of intelligence is a delicate balance, requiring meticulous planning, trust, and nerves of steel. Consider a hypothetical scenario. If an agent delivers precise calculations for implosion lenses 6 months earlier than the Manhattan Project's natural timeline, the first successful detonation could occur months sooner. Entire theaters of war might be shortened. Strategic decisions, such as the timing of Japan's surrender, could be dramatically influenced. The espionage network, invisible to the public eye, becomes a hidden accelerator, a force that shapes history not through brute power but through information carefully stolen, transmitted, and applied. The story of atomic espionage is therefore one of ripple effects. Every fragment of intelligence has the potential to alter experiments, redirect resources, and influence high-level military strategy. By shortening the timeline even modestly, espionage magnifies the Manhattan Project's impact, demonstrating how the secret work of a few individuals operating in the shadows can resonate across continents and battlefields. The atomic bomb, while a triumph of science, is inseparable from the human networks, spies, couriers, and handlers that quietly guided its development. August 6, 1945. Dawn breaks over Hiroshima, and a blinding flash rends the sky. Thousands of lives are consumed in an instant, and the power of the atomic bomb becomes brutally tangible. But behind this moment lies an alternate possibility, a what-if shaped by espionage. What if critical intelligence had reached the Manhattan Project, or even the Axis powers, months earlier? What if stolen formulas, schematics, or calculations had accelerated or disrupted the timeline? The consequences ripple outward, touching not just the war's end, but the very structure of post-war geopolitics. Had espionage shortened the American development of the bomb, the first deployment could have occurred sooner, potentially saving or costing millions of lives depending on how quickly Japan capitulated. Cities spared in a delayed timeline might have been destroyed, naval campaigns curtailed or extended, battles in the Pacific shortened or intensified. The psychological and diplomatic impact of an earlier nuclear demonstration would have reverberated across the world, reshaping negotiations, alliances, and the emerging contours of the Cold War. Conversely, if stolen knowledge had fallen into Axis hands, the trajectory could have been catastrophic, potentially giving Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan an accelerated path to nuclear capability. The delicate balance of wartime secrecy and intelligence suddenly becomes the fulcrum upon which history pivots. Espionage also raises profound ethical questions. Scientists who knowingly participated, willingly or under coercion, in the transfer of atomic knowledge, must contend with the implications of their choices. The interplay of ideology, patriotism, and personal conscience creates a morally gray zone. In some cases, the pursuit of accelerated knowledge could be justified by the desire to end the war sooner. In others, the risk of unleashing devastating consequences makes every action a gamble with the future. The clandestine networks that carried secrets were not merely logistical instruments, they were moral arbiters, deciding who would wield unparalleled destructive power and when. Beyond the immediate war, espionage influences post-war science and intelligence. Nations that benefited from early access to stolen knowledge gained technological head starts, shaping nuclear policy, deterrence strategy, and the global balance of power. The Cold War, nuclear arms races, and the development of missile technologies are all subtly shaped by the timing and flow of classified information during these formative years. Each intercepted document, each coded message, each memorized formula carries a legacy that extends far beyond the laboratory walls. The story of espionage and atomic development underscores a fundamental truth about warfare. Knowledge can be as decisive as bombs, bullets, or fleets. The ability to acquire, interpret, and apply intelligence accelerates human capability in ways that brute force alone cannot. In the case of the Manhattan Project, espionage was not just a sidebar, it was a potential accelerant, a quiet hand that could compress timelines and amplify human ingenuity, altering the course of the most destructive conflict in history. As we consider the what-ifs, we are forced to confront the dual-edged nature of intelligence. It can be a tool of salvation, a shortcut to peace through faster resolution of conflict, or it can become a catalyst for unprecedented destruction. The atomic bomb itself is a symbol of this paradox, and the spies who moved through shadows, memorized formulas, and transmitted secrets are silent architects of a history we can only imagine. Their influence, subtle yet profound, reminds us that the outcomes of war are never determined by technology alone, but by the hidden currents of knowledge and the human choices that direct them. Even after the war, the story of atomic espionage offers enduring lessons. The Manhattan Project was a monumental achievement of science, engineering, and coordination, but it was not immune to the hidden accelerants of human intelligence. Spies like Klaus Fuchs, Theodore Hall, and others demonstrated that information, carefully extracted and strategically deployed, can compress timelines in ways that raw manpower or funding cannot. In effect, espionage acted as an invisible collaborator, quietly guiding the hand of progress without stepping into the light. The implications extend far beyond World War II. Modern intelligence operations, from cyber espionage to industrial intelligence, reflect the same principle. Timely access to critical knowledge can dramatically alter the pace of innovation. Whether in weapons development, energy technology, or even medical research, the ability to acquire and apply information ahead of competitors can yield advantages that are both strategic and existential. In this sense, atomic espionage is a case study not only in wartime intelligence but in the broader dynamics of human ingenuity and risk. Moreover, the human element, the courage, ethics, and motivations of spies, remain central. The decisions of individuals operating in the shadows had consequences far greater than they could have imagined. Each act of intelligence gathering carried the potential to save or endanger millions, demonstrating the moral weight inherent in the acquisition and application of knowledge. For historians, strategists, and policymakers, the Manhattan Project's story underscores the reality that the pace of technological progress can hinge as much on human discretion as on scientific possibility. In reflecting on these events, one also confronts the paradox of secrecy and acceleration. The Manhattan Project thrived under extreme confidentiality, yet the flow of information, even stolen information, proved capable of altering outcomes. It is a reminder that while secrecy can protect, intelligence can propel. Timing, accuracy, and interpretation of information become as crucial as the knowledge itself. The interplay between these forces shaped one of the most consequential developments in human history, the creation and deployment of the atomic bomb. Ultimately, the legacy of espionage in the Manhattan Project is a meditation on the unseen forces that shape history. It challenges us to consider how knowledge, when moved strategically across borders and minds, can accelerate not only scientific achievement but the very course of human events. The spies of World War II, operating in silence and shadow, remind us that the greatest weapons may not always be forged in laboratories, but in the careful collection, transmission, and application of intelligence that transforms potential into reality. What if espionage had compressed the Manhattan Project timeline by 6 months, or even a full year? Imagine 1944 unfolding differently. Scientists in Los Alamos already confident in the critical mass of plutonium, reactor designs validated, and bomb prototypes prepared months earlier. Field tests could have occurred in spring rather than summer of 1945. The war in the Pacific might have concluded sooner, reshaping the geopolitical landscape in ways both subtle and dramatic. Allied planners would have had more leverage in negotiations with Japan, and the post-war balance of power might have shifted even before the first United Nations Assembly convened. In this alternate timeline, the ethical calculus becomes more complex. A faster bomb might have shortened the war, saving hundreds of thousands of lives from prolonged combat, but it could have also introduced new dangers. Untested delivery methods, insufficient tactical planning, or even the accidental targeting of unintended cities. The precision of intelligence becomes paramount. The spies whose memorized calculations and transmitted diagrams accelerated the project now carry amplified responsibility. Every detail matters more than ever, and the consequences of error are catastrophic on a global scale. Espionage in this context is not merely a historical curiosity, it becomes a fulcrum of history. Early intelligence might have allowed scientists to bypass months of trial and error, achieving breakthroughs in enrichment, detonation, or implosion design with minimal delay. Nations waiting on the sidelines would now find themselves responding to an accelerated nuclear timeline, and the speed at which atomic weapons entered the equation would alter diplomacy, military strategy, and even public perception of the United States' technological and strategic dominance. Moreover, the what-if scenario underscores the interplay between science, secrecy, and human judgment. While the Manhattan Project represents the pinnacle of controlled experimentation, espionage introduces variables outside institutional control: human ingenuity, ideological motivations, and risk tolerance. In this alternate reality, the collision of these forces creates a world in which a single agent's memorized formula or stolen schematic can ripple across continents, shortening war timelines and redefining power structures. Ultimately, imagining a faster bomb reveals the fragility and contingency of history. The Manhattan Project succeeded as it did because of a delicate balance of secrecy, talent, and timing. Espionage could have accelerated that balance, or disrupted it entirely. By exploring this alternate timeline, we gain a deeper appreciation for the invisible currents that shape pivotal moments in history, and for the quiet, unseen actors whose choices influence outcomes as profoundly as armies and nations. The Manhattan Project stands as one of history's most extraordinary feats of science and coordination, yet espionage reminds us that even the greatest human achievements rarely occur in isolation. The silent labor of spies, memorizing formulas, transmitting schematics, and navigating networks of secrecy, served as a force multiplier, magnifying the impact of each experiment, calculation, and prototype. Without their subtle contributions, timelines might have stretched longer, resources might have been misallocated, and the world might have waited months longer to witness the bomb's fateful debut. Espionage, in this context, is as much about timing and precision as it is about access. A single note or diagram delivered at the right moment can allow scientists to bypass trial and error, validate hypotheses, and make leaps that would otherwise take months of iterative work. The value of this intelligence lies not only in the information itself but in its strategic application, how it informs decisions, directs resources, and shapes the actions of those with the power to turn knowledge into reality. Moreover, the ethical dimension of espionage cannot be overstated. The spies who accelerated nuclear development operated in a morally ambiguous space. Their actions were clandestine, often illegal, and carried immense consequences. Yet, in the context of a global war, their choices could be justified as pragmatic interventions in the service of a larger goal, ending a conflict and saving lives. The dual nature of espionage, as both accelerant and risk, highlights the profound responsibilities inherent in controlling critical knowledge. History rarely acknowledges these invisible actors. Scientists, military planners, and political leaders dominate the narrative, while spies remain shadowy figures, their work known only to those who handled, transmitted, or decoded the intelligence. Yet their influence is undeniable. By subtly altering the pace of research, espionage can redirect the trajectory of events, compress timelines, and reshape outcomes in ways that are nearly impossible to measure but profoundly consequential. Ultimately, espionage in the Manhattan Project serves as a lens through which to understand the broader relationship between knowledge and power. Intelligence is not just a tactical tool, it is a catalyst that accelerates human innovation and strategic decision-making. In the case of the atomic bomb, spies operating in the shadows remind us that history is not solely shaped by public acts of heroism or visible demonstrations of power, but also by the quiet, deliberate, and often unseen interventions that guide the flow of critical information. The echoes of Manhattan Project espionage reach far beyond the desert labs of New Mexico or the covert apartments of Europe. They set a precedent for the modern intersection of intelligence and technological advancement, illustrating how clandestine operations can accelerate not only weapons development but also broader innovation. Today, cyber espionage, industrial intelligence, and electronic surveillance trace their lineage to the lessons learned during World War II, where stolen knowledge became a lever for strategic advantage and geopolitical leverage. The atomic spies demonstrated that intelligence is more than just information. It is a multiplier. By compressing timelines, directing resources, and validating experimental approaches, espionage can transform potential into reality faster than conventional research alone. The ramifications are profound. Nations with access to critical secrets gain decisive advantages, whether in war, diplomacy, or technological competition. In essence, the spy becomes an invisible architect of history, shaping outcomes as effectively as generals or scientists, but without the recognition or acclaim. Moreover, the Manhattan Project case underscores the delicate balance between secrecy and progress. While classified information safeguards national security, it also creates gaps that espionage can exploit. The stakes of accessing this knowledge are enormous, and the consequences of misapplication can be catastrophic. Yet, when handled with precision, intelligence can catalyze innovation, accelerate development, and even alter the trajectory of global events. This duality, risk and reward, secrecy and speed, defines the role of espionage in high-stakes scientific and military endeavors. Reflecting on these events, we recognize that espionage is not merely a wartime tactic but a fundamental driver of human capability. The atomic spies of World War II illuminate how information, when acquired and applied judiciously, can shorten the path to revolutionary breakthroughs, reshape conflicts, and influence the balance of power. Their work reminds us that in the complex interplay of knowledge, technology, and strategy, the most powerful weapons may be intangible. Insight, timing, and the foresight to act upon secrets before others realize their value. Ultimately, the story of espionage and the atomic bomb is a narrative of invisible influence and profound consequences. It challenges us to reconsider how history unfolds, emphasizing that the hidden currents of intelligence can be as decisive as battles themselves. By examining the Manhattan Project through the lens of espionage, we gain a deeper understanding of how clandestine action can accelerate innovation, compress timelines, and alter the fate of nations, an enduring lesson for policymakers, scientists, and strategists alike. Even as the Manhattan Project achieved its ultimate goal, the shadow of espionage raises a profound moral question. Can the act of stealing knowledge ever be ethically justified, particularly when it accelerates a weapon of unparalleled destructive power? Agents like Klaus Fuchs and Theodore Hall did not operate in a moral vacuum. Their decisions were informed by ideology, personal conviction, and the belief that their intelligence might shift the balance of power or prevent greater loss of life. Yet the consequences of their actions were monumental, far exceeding the immediate scope of their missions. The ethical paradox lies in the dual nature of espionage. On one hand, it can save lives by shortening conflicts, enabling nations to act more decisively, and providing critical insight that prevents missteps. On the other hand, it risks unleashing destruction faster, placing unprecedented power into human hands before safety, oversight, or understanding are fully established. In the atomic context, every memorized formula, every stolen schematic, and every coded message carried moral weight, a responsibility as heavy as the plutonium core itself. History judges these acts differently depending on perspective. To the Allies, Fuchs's betrayal might appear treacherous, yet his information delivery also accelerated Soviet nuclear development, influencing post-war geopolitics and the eventual balance of the Cold War. Theodore Hall, by contrast, acted quietly and deliberately, his youth and idealism shaping choices that would ripple through decades of scientific and political history. These agents embody the tension between personal conviction, loyalty, and the greater consequences of intelligence. Espionage also highlights the broader responsibility of scientists and policymakers. The very act of creating a weapon of mass destruction entails ethical considerations. Adding espionage into the mix magnifies the stakes. Knowledge is not neutral, it is power, and power in the hands of clandestine networks carries both strategic potential and catastrophic risk. The Manhattan Project, accelerated or influenced by espionage, serves as a cautionary tale of how human curiosity, ingenuity, and secrecy intersect to produce outcomes that challenge conventional morality. Ultimately, the moral paradox of atomic espionage forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. That history is shaped not only by visible actions but by invisible hands, that intelligence can shorten timelines at the expense of safety, and that the ethical dimensions of knowledge transfer are inseparable from the technology it enables. The legacy of espionage during the Manhattan Project is therefore not only a story of accelerated scientific achievement, but also a meditation on the responsibilities, choices, and consequences that accompany the most powerful discoveries in human history. History is a tapestry woven from choices, chance, and unseen forces. Espionage during the Manhattan Project represents one of the most consequential invisible threads in that tapestry. Consider a scenario where critical intelligence arrived even earlier, Fuchs or Hall transmitting schematics months ahead of schedule. The Manhattan Project, despite its immense resources and talent, could have moved at an unprecedented pace. Field tests could have been conducted sooner, delivery plans revised earlier, and strategic decisions across the Pacific and European theaters accelerated. Entire timelines of warfare could have shifted in ways few dared to imagine at the time. The ripple effects extend far beyond military strategy. A faster atomic bomb could have influenced diplomatic negotiations, shaping post-war settlements and potentially altering the trajectory of the Cold War. Nations anticipating the bomb's deployment would have to respond sooner, recalibrating military planning, alliances, and intelligence operations. The presence of espionage as a catalyst underscores that knowledge itself is a weapon, capable of transforming not just battles, but entire global dynamics. Yet there is a cautionary dimension to this "what if?" Accelerating the bomb's development through stolen intelligence does not guarantee safer or more ethical outcomes. Shortened timelines risk errors, untested delivery systems, and hasty decisions that might amplify human suffering. The intersection of espionage and weaponization highlights a fragile balance. Intelligence can be a force multiplier, but it is also a magnifier of consequence. The faster the knowledge flows, the less time there is for oversight, reflection, or mitigation of unintended outcomes. This scenario also emphasizes the human dimension of espionage. Behind every transmission of stolen schematics or memorized calculation was an individual navigating fear, loyalty, ideology, and conscience. Their decisions, often invisible and unrecorded, determine not just the speed of scientific progress, but the pace at which history unfolded. The Manhattan Project, therefore, is as much a story of human judgment and courage as it is of physics and engineering. By exploring these alternate possibilities, we gain a deeper appreciation for the delicate contingencies of history. Espionage did not merely supplement the Manhattan Project. It had the potential to redefine it. The invisible currents of intelligence, carried in letters, microfilms, and memorized formulas, remind us that the outcomes of war and science are never determined by raw talent alone, but by the quiet, unseen choices of those who navigate the shadows. As the dust settled over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the world confronted the unprecedented power of the atomic bomb, the role of espionage remained largely invisible. Yet the spies of the Manhattan Project, Fuchs, Hall, and others, demonstrated that knowledge could accelerate history in ways that armies, fleets, and laboratories alone could not. Their memorized formulas, stolen schematics, and carefully transmitted intelligence served as invisible accelerants, compressing timelines and amplifying human ingenuity. They were the hidden catalysts behind one of the most consequential technological achievements in history. The story of atomic espionage forces us to confront the broader lesson that knowledge, when moved strategically, can be as decisive as any conventional weapon. Espionage does not simply gather information. It transforms it into power, guiding experiments, shaping strategy, and influencing decisions on a global scale. In the case of the Manhattan Project, the careful actions of a few individuals in the shadows had consequences that reverberated across continents, altering the timing of war's end, the structure of post-war geopolitics, and the very trajectory of human history. Moreover, espionage illuminates the profound moral complexity of scientific and strategic innovation. The choices of spies were informed by ideology, conscience, and circumstance, yet their effects were tangible and far-reaching. Accelerating a weapon capable of unprecedented destruction raises ethical dilemmas that persist in modern debates over nuclear technology, cyber warfare, and intelligence operations. It is a reminder that the acquisition and application of knowledge carries responsibilities as weighty as the knowledge itself. Ultimately, the Manhattan Project illustrates that history is shaped not only by the visible acts of those in power but also by the quiet interventions of those who navigate the shadows. Espionage, in this context, is not a mere footnote, it is a force multiplier, an invisible hand that can shorten timelines, guide innovation, and alter the course of events. The atomic bomb, while a triumph of science and engineering, was also a product of human networks, ethical dilemmas, and the strategic manipulation of information. In the end, the legacy of espionage during the Manhattan Project is both a cautionary tale and a testament to the power of intelligence. It reminds us that knowledge can be weaponized, accelerated, and transformed into decisive action. And it compels us to acknowledge the hidden architects of history, those who, in silence and secrecy, helped shape the world we know today.